11:22 p.m. at Rusty's Stop gas station near Newark. A giant man, 7 feet tall and 325 pounds, hunches under the low ceiling. That is Shaquille O'Neal, a famous champion and billionaire. But tonight, he wears an old gray hoodie. He just wants to find 99-cent cookies from his childhood. In front of him is Carla, a single mom with only $1.09 in her pocket. She shakily puts her last dollar on the counter for a scratch ticket. Suddenly, a giant hand slams down on the ticket. "That's mine," he says. A dead silence fills the room. Why would a man worth $400 million steal a poor woman's last hope? The clerk is mean, and Carla owes $3,400 in rent. Will Carla break down? What is the secret behind those cruel words? 16 hours earlier, the sun had not even risen over Newark. Carla Jennings was already awake. Her alarm buzzed at 4 a.m. in a small apartment on Elm Street. The heater did not work. Her breath showed in the cold air. She worked at Steam and Iron, a laundry plant on the edge of town. Her hands were red and cracked from the hot chemicals. Every day, she pressed hotel sheets for 10 hours straight. Her back hurt. Her feet hurt. But she never complained out loud. On the fridge, a photo of her daughter Maya was held up by a magnet. Maya was 7 years old. She had a gap in her front teeth. Carla looked at that photo every morning before work. It reminded her why she kept going. The electric bill sat on the counter, marked past due. It said $214.12, and the deadline was tomorrow. Her bank account had exactly $1.09 left after buying Maya's fever medicine. She had paid $8.91 for that medicine 2 days ago. It was worth every penny, but it left her with almost nothing. Carla whispered to herself, "Just one lucky dollar. That's all I need." She did not believe in luck. Not really. But some nights, believing was the only thing keeping her upright. Before work, Carla walked Maya to Mrs. Delgado's apartment down the hall. The morning air was sharp and cold, biting at her fingers. Maya wore a coat 2 sizes too big, a hand-me-down from a cousin. "Be good for Mrs. Delgado," Carla said, kissing the top of her head. Maya nodded sleepily, still half dreaming as she shuffled through the doorway. Carla watched the door close, then turned and walked toward the bus stop. Her car had broken down twice that week, so she took the bus. The bus was late, as usual, and the wind cut through her jacket. She counted the minutes, knowing every late minute meant trouble with Frank. A stranger at the stop offered her half of his umbrella against the drizzle. She thanked him quietly, grateful for a small kindness on a hard morning. At the laundry plant, the machines roared like angry giants. Steam rose from the pressing machines in thick, heavy clouds. The air smelled like bleach and hot cotton, sharp in her throat. Carla folded sheet after sheet, her mind far away. Other workers moved around her, tired faces lit by flickering fluorescent lights. Nobody talked much. Talking wasted energy nobody could spare. The clock on the wall moved slower than any clock had a right to move. Her supervisor, a tired man named Frank, called her over at noon. "Carla, we're cutting your hours next month," he said flatly. Her stomach dropped. Fewer hours meant less money. She already worked every shift she could get. "Please, Frank. I have a daughter. I need those hours," she said. Frank shrugged. "Corporate says we're overstaffed. Nothing I can do." Carla walked away before he could see her eyes water. She could not afford to look weak at work. Weakness got you fired faster than mistakes did. By 8 p.m., Carla picked up Maya from her neighbor's apartment. Mrs. Delgado watched Maya for $5 a day. It was cheap, but $5 still mattered when you had none. "Mommy, can we get ice cream?" Maya asked, tugging her sleeve. Carla's chest tightened. "Not tonight, baby. Maybe this weekend." Maya did not complain. She just nodded and held her mother's hand tighter. That small nod broke Carla's heart more than any scream could. Kids learn to stop asking when they learn the answer is always no. Carla tucked Maya into bed at 9:30 p.m. The blanket was thin, so she added her own coat on top. Maya's room was small, barely big enough for a bed and a dresser. A string of paper stars hung above the bed, made from old homework pages. Maya had made them herself, cutting careful points with dull scissors. "Mommy, will we always live here?" Maya asked, half asleep already. Carla's throat tightened. She forced a smile onto her tired face. "We'll always have a home, baby. I promise you that." She sat on the edge of the mattress and stroked her daughter's hair. "I'm going to fix this," Carla whispered. "I promise." She did not know how, but she said it anyway. Promises were sometimes the only gift a tired mother had left to give. Maya's breathing slowed into the steady rhythm of sleep. Carla stayed a few extra minutes, just watching her daughter's face. The paper stars above the bed swayed gently in the cold draft. In sleep, Maya looked peaceful, unaware of the numbers haunting her mother. After Maya fell asleep, Carla sat alone at the kitchen table. The only light came from a small lamp with a flickering bulb. She opened a folder stuffed with red envelopes. Each envelope held a bill she could not fully pay. One said, "Final notice," in bold letters from her landlord. Mr. Graves wanted $3,400 for 2 months of unpaid rent. If she did not pay by Friday, he would start the eviction process. She had already asked her sister for help, but her sister had nothing either. Her sister worked 2 jobs and barely covered her own family's needs. She had already sold her mother's old ring at a pawn shop downtown. It only brought in $60, barely enough to cover groceries for a week. There was nothing left to sell, nothing left to borrow. Carla had reached the very bottom of what she could offer. Carla put her head in her hands and let herself cry, just for a minute. Then she wiped her face and stood up. Crying never paid a bill. She washed her face with cold water at the kitchen sink. Looking in the small mirror above it, she barely recognized herself. Dark circles sat under her eyes, deeper than she remembered. "Tomorrow," she said to her reflection. "Just get through tomorrow." Her old car, a 2004 sedan with a cracked windshield, sat outside. It rattled every time she started the engine. She drove toward Rusty's Stop, a gas station 2 blocks from home. She told herself she just needed milk for tomorrow's coffee. But there was another reason, one she barely admitted to herself. The lottery machine at Rusty's Stop had a new game called New Jersey Hope. Tickets cost $1. The jackpot was huge, bigger than she could imagine. Carla knew the odds were terrible. Everyone knew that. But Hope does not care about odds. It just wants a reason to exist. She parked outside the gas station and sat in the car for a moment. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, cold and stiff from the night air. She thought about turning around and going straight home instead. But something pulled her toward the door, some small stubborn spark. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the last flicker of hope she had. She took a deep breath and stepped out into the cold parking lot. The gas station smelled like old coffee and motor oil. A bell above the door gave a weak, half-broken jingle. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering every few seconds. Rows of chips and candy bars lined the narrow, dusty shelves. Behind the counter stood Dwayne, a thin man with slicked-back hair. He counted a stack of crumpled bills, licking his thumb between each one. Dwayne did not look up when Carla walked in. He never did. To him, she was just another tired face in a tired town. A small television behind the counter played a muted late-night show. The cold outside made the warm, stale air inside feel almost comforting. In the back corner, a massive figure filled almost the entire aisle. He wore a gray hoodie, with the hood pulled low, hiding most of his face. His shoulders nearly touched both sides of the narrow shelf. He moved slowly, careful not to knock anything off the crowded shelves. He was reaching for something on the top shelf, moving carefully. His hand dwarfed the small package he finally pulled down. He picked up a small package of cookies, the cheap kind, 99 cents each. He held them gently, like they meant something more than food. For a moment, he looked less like a stranger and more like a tired man. A man just trying to remember a simpler, easier time in his life. Carla walked to the counter and placed her last dollar on the glass. Her hand shook slightly. She had done the math 3 times already. $1 for a ticket meant no coffee creamer this week. But if she won even $50, it could help with groceries. "One New Jersey Hope, please," she said quietly. Dwayne slid the ticket across the counter without a word. He glanced at his phone screen, barely paying attention. Carla picked up a coin from the tip jar to scratch the ticket. Her fingers trembled as she rubbed away the silver coating. Small silver flecks fell onto the counter like tiny snowflakes. Numbers began to appear, one by one, under the scratched surface. She held her breath, hoping for even a small, modest prize. Her heart started pounding. Something looked different about this ticket. The numbers seemed to repeat in a pattern she did not fully understand. Before she could finish, a massive hand slammed down on the counter. It covered the ticket completely, fingers like thick branches. "That's mine," the giant man said, his voice low and firm. Carla froze. The whole store went silent except for the humming lights. She stared up at him, confusion turning quickly into fear. "Excuse me? I just paid for this ticket," she said, her voice cracking. He did not move his hand. He did not explain himself either. His eyes, though, looked sad rather than greedy. "Are you crazy?" Carla shouted, her exhaustion finally breaking into anger. "I have $1.09 to my name, and you want to steal this?" Tears spilled down her cheeks, mixing anger with pure desperation. "You're a monster," she said, her voice shaking. "A bully in a hoodie." The giant man said nothing. He simply held her gaze, unbothered by the insult. His silence felt heavier than any shout could have been. Dwayne finally looked up, sensing a chance to get involved. He had seen something on the security screen a moment earlier. A tiny code near the bottom of the ticket had flashed on his monitor. That code meant one thing in the lottery system: a major winner. Dwayne's eyes narrowed, with greed instead of concern for Carla. "Let me see that," he said, reaching across the counter fast. "There might be a mistake with the machine. I need to check it." He was lying. He wanted to swap the ticket for a fake one. The giant man moved his hand slightly, blocking Dwayne's reach. "Nobody touches this ticket," he said, his voice calm but firm. Dwayne pulled his hand back, suddenly unsure of himself. Something about this stranger made him feel small, even scared. The giant man reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out cash. His fingers, thick as sausages, carefully unfolded a small stack of bills. He placed a crisp $100 bill on the counter for Dwayne. "That covers the ticket and the cookies," he said simply. Dwayne stared at the bill, then back at the giant man, confused. He had never seen anyone pay that much for a $1 ticket. Then he turned to Carla, his expression softening just slightly. "You want this ticket back? Then drive me somewhere," he said. "Where?" Carla asked, still trembling from anger and confusion. 42, Bergen Street. "Does your car make it 5 miles? Carla stared at him like he had lost his mind completely. But the ticket was still trapped under his massive hand. She needed it back, whatever strange game this man was playing. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "But you're explaining everything." He nodded once, picked up the cookies, and walked toward the door. Carla's old sedan groaned under the giant man's weight. The whole car tilted slightly as he settled into the seat. He folded himself into the passenger seat, knees pressed against the dashboard. His head brushed the ceiling, forcing him to duck slightly the whole ride. The seatbelt barely stretched far enough to click into place. The car smelled like fast food wrappers and old coffee cups. Carla gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white with tension. Her mind spun, with questions she was too afraid to ask out loud. "Who even are you?" she asked, glancing at him sideways. He just looked out the window, watching the dark streets pass by. "Someone who used to live around here," he said quietly. The engine sputtered at every red light, threatening to die completely. Carla's frustration boiled over into quiet, exhausted sobs. "You don't understand," she said. "I owe $3,400 in rent. My landlord is going to throw us out on Friday." The giant man remained silent, but his jaw tightened slightly. He had heard those words before, in a different life, long ago. They drove past boarded-up houses and cracked sidewalks. Streetlights flickered on and off, some burned out completely. A stray dog trotted along the curb, searching for scraps of food. The giant man asked her to stop near an old basketball court. Chain-link fences surrounded broken hoops, with no nets left. Weeds pushed up, through cracks in the pavement, tangled and dry. Under a flickering streetlight, an old man named Cooper sat shivering. He sat on a flattened cardboard box, his knees pulled to his chest. Cooper wore a thin jacket, clearly not warm enough for the cold night. His hands shook, not from fear, but from hunger and cold. A small backpack sat beside him, holding everything he owned in the world. The giant man stepped out of the car slowly, careful with his size. He walked toward Cooper and crouched down to his level. "You eaten today?" he asked gently, his voice much softer now. Cooper shook his head, embarrassed to admit the truth out loud. The giant man turned back toward Carla, who had followed cautiously. He held out the scratch ticket, still unscratched at the corner. "You can leave right now, with this," he said, looking at her. "Or you can use whatever you have to feed him first." Carla's mind raced through the numbers she carried in her head daily. $3,400 in rent, $214, $12 for electricity, $1.09 in her account. This ticket could be worth nothing, or it could be worth everything. She did not know the actual prize amount yet, not for certain. But hope was heavy in her chest, heavier than she wanted to admit. She looked at Cooper, whose eyes held no anger, only quiet dignity. He was not begging. He was simply surviving, one cold night at a time. Something about his posture reminded her of her own tired reflection. Carla remembered her own mother, who once fed strangers during hard winters. Her mother used to say hunger did not care about anyone's schedule. "Wait here," she said, walking back to her car. She dug through her glove compartment and found loose change. Quarters, dimes, and a few crumpled dollar bills, maybe $6 total. It was not much, but it was something real she could give. She walked across the street to Gino's, a small diner still open. A bell above the door jingled as she stepped inside. The diner smelled like fried onions and strong black coffee. An older waitress, with tired eyes, gave her a small, understanding nod. She counted out her coins carefully, placing them one by one on the counter. She ordered a hot meal, a burger with fries and coffee. The waitress packed it into a paper bag, adding a few extra napkins. "Cold night for anyone to be outside," the waitress said quietly. Carla nodded, thanking her, and hurried back out into the cold. She carried it back carefully, steam rising into the cold night air. The warmth of the bag felt good against her freezing hands. Cooper's eyes filled with tears when she handed him the food. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice cracking with gratitude. "Nobody's done something like this for me in years." Carla smiled, even though her own problems still weighed heavy on her. For one moment, giving felt more important than receiving. The giant man watched, from the shadows, arms crossed over his massive chest. Something in his expression shifted, softer than before, almost proud. Cooper ate slowly, savoring every bite like it might be his last meal. "Thank you," he said again, quieter this time, almost to himself. The giant man walked toward an old brick house across the street. Paint peeled from its walls, and the porch light barely worked. A rusted mailbox hung crooked beside the front steps. The windows were dark, but the house still stood, stubborn against time. "I grew up in a house just like this one," he said quietly. Carla followed his gaze, confused but curious about his story. "My mother, Lucille, used to say money was just a tool. She said dignity was the real treasure, something nobody could steal." His voice grew heavier, thick with memories from long ago. "She worked 3 jobs just to keep food on our table. I never forgot the sound of her counting coins at the kitchen table." He looked down at his own hands, remembering things long buried. "She passed when I was young, before I ever made real money. I would give it all back just to hear her voice one more time." Carla felt something shift inside her chest, a strange kind of understanding. This giant stranger was not so different from her after all. Underneath the sighs and the silence, he carried the same tired ache she did. Her phone buzzed loudly in her jacket pocket, breaking the quiet moment. It was 1:15 a.m. The caller ID showed Mr. Graves. Carla's stomach dropped as she answered, with a shaking hand. "Carla, this is your final warning," Mr. Graves said coldly. "If I don't have $3,400 by 7 a.m., you're out. Your things will be on the curb whether you're there or not." "I don't care where you and that kid go," he added sharply. "Business is business. I have a schedule to keep." He hung up before she could even respond or explain herself. Carla stared at the phone screen, her reflection ghostly in the dark glass. 7 hours. That was all she had left before losing everything. 7 hours to find $3,400 she simply did not have. Carla sank down onto the cracked sidewalk, her legs giving out completely. Sobs shook her entire body, as reality crashed down all at once. "Please," she said, looking up at the giant man standing nearby. "Just give me the ticket back. I don't need to be rich. I just need a roof over my daughter's head. That's all." Her voice cracked on the last word, raw with exhaustion and fear. The giant man knelt down slowly, bringing himself closer to her level. His massive frame blocked the cold wind from reaching her face. "Carla, listen to me," he said, his tone gentle but serious. At the gas station, Dwayne saw something on that ticket. He was going to swap it for a fake one while you weren't looking. I said it was mine, so he wouldn't dare touch it. Carla stared at him, confusion slowly turning into disbelief. "That ticket is a jackpot winner," he said. "The real jackpot." Carla grabbed the ticket with shaking hands and looked closely at the numbers. Her mind struggled to process what she was actually seeing. The numbers matched perfectly with the winning combination printed nearby. Shock replaced the exhaustion on her face almost instantly. "This can't be real," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's real," the giant man said. "And it's yours. It always was." Carla looked up at him, tears streaming freely now, but different tears. "Why would you help me? Who even are you?" she asked again. He offered a small, tired smile, the first one she had seen. "Just a kid from Newark who never forgot what hunger tastes like." He stood up slowly and reached out a hand to help her rise. "Come on, we're not done tonight. We need to go back there." They returned to Rusty's stop just after 2:30 a.m. Dwayne was behind the counter, looking pleased with himself. He believed he had successfully tricked Carla out of her ticket. When he saw the giant man walk in, his smile disappeared instantly. His hands began to shake as recognition slowly crossed his face. The giant man did not raise his voice or make a scene. He walked slowly, letting his footsteps echo across the quiet store. Dwayne's smile faded with every step, replaced by growing unease. The giant man simply placed his identification card flat on the counter. Dwayne's eyes widened as he read the name printed clearly. You're Shaquille O'Neal," Dwayne stammered, his confidence crumbling completely. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't recognize you," he added quickly. Shaq nodded once, calm as ever, his silence more powerful than words. "You saw a winning ticket and tried to steal it from a tired mother. That has nothing to do with whether you recognized my face." Dwayne opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again, saying nothing. He pulled out his phone and made a short, quiet phone call. "Hey, it's Shaq. Yeah, it's about your employee at the Newark location." The person on the other end was an old friend, the station's owner. Within minutes, Dwayne received a call telling him he was fired immediately. He tried to argue, but the owner's decision was already final. Dwayne left the store that night with nothing but his own regret. Carla received official paperwork confirming her win from the lottery office. A representative met them briefly outside the gas station, folder in hand. He explained the jackpot total, arriving under Shaq's quiet sponsorship. The number on the page made Carla's knees go weak beneath her. It was more money than she had ever imagined seeing in her life. The prize would be processed properly through legal and verified channels. Nothing would come in cash. Everything would follow the rules, step by step. Carla could not stop staring at the papers in her trembling hands. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to truly hope. She read the numbers again and again, checking they were really true. At 7 a.m., Carla arrived home to find Mr. Graves waiting outside. He stood by her door, with crossed arms and an impatient expression. A small moving truck idled behind him, ready to haul her things away. "Well, do you have my money, or should I call the movers?" he asked. Carla's hands tightened around the folder of paperwork she carried. Before she could answer, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Mr. Graves turned, annoyed by the interruption to his morning routine. The door opened, and Shaq stepped out, ducking under the frame. His size seemed even larger in the pale morning light. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, curious about the commotion. He walked over slowly and looked directly into Mr. Graves' eyes. Mr. Graves opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. His confident posture from moments earlier had completely disappeared. Mr. Graves' arrogant expression faltered the moment he recognized the face. I bought this building last night, Shaq said calmly, holding out a folder. Mr. Graves opened it, with shaking hands, scanning the legal documents inside. He flipped through page after page, searching for some kind of mistake. Everything was verified, signed, and completely official through proper channels. This is real, Mr. Graves whispered, disbelief washing over his face. The moving truck behind him idled uselessly, no longer needed at all. Shaq turned to Carla, offering her a set of shiny new keys. They caught the morning light, small and simple in his massive palm. You're the new manager here, he said. Starting today. Your first month's rent is already covered. Consider it settled. There's also a bonus, he added, for not walking away from Cooper. Carla's hands trembled as she took the keys, tears falling freely again. The metal felt warm from his hand, solid and real against her palm. I don't know how to thank you, she said, her voice breaking. Nobody has ever done anything like this for me before. Shaq shook his head gently. You already did. You fed a stranger. That's worth more than any amount of money could ever be. Kindness like that doesn't need a reward to matter, he added quietly. Maya ran outside in her pajamas, confused by all the commotion. Her bare feet slapped against the cold concrete steps. She looked up at the giant man towering over her mother. He seemed impossibly tall from where she stood, blocking out the sun. Mommy, who is that? She asked, eyes wide with curiosity. Carla knelt down and hugged her daughter tightly, smiling through her tears. That's someone who reminded me what kindness really looks like, she said. Maya tilted her head, not fully understanding, but sensing something good had happened. She could tell by her mother's face that the worry was finally gone. Shaq crouched down to Maya's level, careful not to seem intimidating. He handed her a small package of 99-cent cookies from his pocket. These were my favorite. When I was your age, he said warmly. Maya smiled shyly, clutching the cookies like a treasure. For a moment, the giant man looked less like a legend. He looked simply like a man remembering his own childhood. Words spread slowly through the neighborhood over the following days. Nobody knew the full story, only fragments whispered between neighbors. Some said a rich man had saved a struggling mother from eviction. Others said it was pure luck, nothing more than chance. A few people swore they saw a giant man near the old basketball court. Nobody could ever agree on exactly what happened that strange night. Carla never corrected anyone. Some stories are better left quiet. She simply went to work each morning, grateful and steady. Her new job as building manager gave her something she had missed for years. It gave her stability, the kind that let her sleep through the night. The scholarship program at the old laundry plant grew steadily that year. It paid for night classes, giving workers a path toward better jobs. Workers received better hours, fair wages, and real opportunities to advance. New schedules were posted, fairer than anything Carla had seen there before. Nobody connected it publicly to a quiet donation made months earlier. Frank, her old supervisor, later apologized for cutting her hours before. Things are different now, he said, looking almost embarrassed by the change. Carla simply nodded and moved forward, carrying no bitterness in her heart. She had learned that holding on to anger only weighed a person down further. Cooper found a warm bed and steady meals at a local shelter. The shelter received an anonymous donation covering renovations and new supplies. New mattresses replaced the old, thin cots along the walls. The kitchen got a working stove, replacing one that had broken years earlier. Nobody asked where the money came from. They were simply grateful. Cooper often walked past Rusty's stop, now under new, kinder management. The old flickering lights had been replaced with warm, steady ones. The new manager always waved and offered him a free cup of coffee. He always smiled, remembering the night a stranger changed everything for him. He kept the paper bag from Gino's diner folded in his backpack. It was a small thing, but it reminded him that people could still care. Months later, on a quiet evening, Carla sat on her porch. The summer air was warm, nothing like that cold winter night. Maya played nearby, laughing as she chased fireflies in the yard. Her laughter echoed across the small courtyard, light and free. The apartment building behind them buzzed with life and quiet stability. Neighbors sat on their own porches, chatting over cold glasses of tea. Rent was paid. Bills were current. Sleep came easier now at night. Carla no longer flinched every time her phone buzzed with a call. She no longer dreaded opening the mailbox each afternoon. Carla often thought about that strange, silent giant from the gas station. She wondered sometimes if she had imagined the whole encounter. But the keys in her pocket and the job she loved proved it was real. She never saw him again after that morning with Mr. Graves. But sometimes, late at night, she noticed small signs of his presence. A new scholarship fund helped local kids attend summer programs for free. Nobody's name was attached to the donation, just a simple thank you note. A quiet renovation at Gino's Diner kept prices low for struggling families. New booths appeared, along with a sign offering free coffee for veterans. The old basketball court got new hoops, with nets that actually stayed on. Kids played there every evening now, laughing under bright new lights. Nothing loud, nothing boastful, just quiet acts scattered across the neighborhood. Each one felt like a small note left behind by someone who understood struggle. Somewhere across the city, a massive figure walked alone under streetlights. His hood was pulled low, his pace slow and unhurried. The night air was cool, carrying the smell of rain from earlier. He passed by a corner store, glancing briefly through the window. Inside, a tired-looking cashier counted coins for a customer's late-night purchase. The scene looked familiar, almost like watching an old memory replay itself. The giant man paused for just a moment, then kept walking. He thought about his mother, about counted coins on a different kitchen table. He thought about all the nights hunger had kept him awake, as a boy. There would always be another Carla somewhere, another Cooper shivering in the cold. There would always be another tired mother counting pennies at midnight. And somewhere, quietly, he would keep showing up when it mattered most. Not for attention, not for thanks, just because he remembered what it felt like. Back on her porch, Carla looked up at the stars above Newark. The sky was clear, that night, scattered with faint, quiet lights. She thought about dignity, about kindness, about the value of small choices. She thought about how one decision at a rundown basketball court changed everything. A single dollar had changed her life, but not in the way she expected. It was not the money that saved her. It was a choice to feed a stranger instead of chasing her own fortune. That choice had opened a door no lottery ticket ever could have opened alone. Maya ran up the porch steps, breathless and smiling widely. "Mommy, look what I found," she said, holding out a shiny coin.